They say, show me a woman without shame, and I'll show you a man. Welcome to Shameless Parenting. Welcome back.
Yeah, good to be back.
Well, we are in Melbourne at the moment.
Yep.
We've come down to Melbourne to see your mum and your
Yep.
brother. He's never met Rory.
Yeah, exactly. We just thought we would pop down.
So we thought we'd do a episode on travelling
Yes.
with kids.
We've got quite a bit of experience now with travelling, especially, I guess, plane travel. We went to Europe last year with an 9-month-old. We come down to Melbourne quite frequently. Obviously, that was usually with one baby or potentially all 3 kids, and now it's with the 4. So, yeah, I feel like we've got a little bit that we could share.
We do, but I guess we could probably talk about the short-term travel, just the domestic travel maybe today. But I don't know, how did you think of the flight?
Look, we were lucky on this flight. We had a spare seat next to us, and when you're traveling with kids, especially with us, we're traveling with 2 under 2, so we had basically one child each on our laps. Having a spare seat next to us was a total game changer. I think that the experience would have been very different, and probably will be our experience going back, not having a spare seat.
Yeah, and we should probably just kind of outline for listeners that are tuning in for the first time. We have 2 under 2 at the moment. So Rory is 10 weeks old now, just clocked over. Mm-hmm. And Rose is 18 months, let's say.
20 months, yeah.
20 months, yeah. So, yeah, she's very, very active. She's hard to sit still. It's quite interesting. But what I thought I would do is we'll get stuck off into the listener question straight away. But then I want to come back for something around the Sydney-Melbourne thing. Yep. Just to get your point of view.
And just if you hear anything in the background, we've got Rory on the lap as usual, who I think is currently trying to do a big poo.
Let's see if our mics pick those up. All right. Ooh, this one's addressing us now. So I love the fact that these questions are now addressing us personally. Keep sending them in, subscribe, share them around, please. So this one says, Dear Steph, my husband's idea of packing for our 2 under 2 involves tossing a single onesie and a toy into a suitcase and calling it a day, while I end up managing everything else. To top it off, during the flights, he magically transforms into an oblivious passenger. Headphones on, while the kids see me as their only source of entertainment and comfort. And then he has the nerve to blame me when some of his stuff is missing, because I supposedly didn't pack it. How do I get him to share the mental load? Not just at home, but 30,000 feet above the ground too.
You didn't write this one in, did you? No.
I dubbed myself in.
Yeah.
Initial thoughts?
Look, I think that, we've got packing down to a bit of a fine art. We're sort of a bit of a well-oiled machine when it comes to packing because we both have our different things that we pack. I do feel like I take a little bit more of the mental load when it comes to packing. You kind of do like the tech. I don't have to think about the tech and your own toiletries, and I think I basically do everything else.
I'm gonna let you finish.
This time, I did say to you had to pack your own clothes, but quite often I do actually pack your clothes for you, but you're usually pretty easy to pack for because you literally just have 10 of the same t-shirts, multiples of the same shorts, pants.
Got the Steve Jobs thing going.
Yeah, you do a bit of a Steve Jobs going thing. But this time I was like, I don't know what you want for Melbourne. It's cold. Like, what do you want to do? You need to pack your own stuff. So I feel for her. I think that it can be tough, and I do feel like often it is the woman or primary carer who does take on the mental load of doing the majority of the packing. I would say that's definitely sort of the case for us as well.
Yeah.
And there is a lot to think about because you're trying to think of, okay, how many different items of clothes do we need for each of the kids? What do we need in hand carry versus, packed in the suitcase? When you've got kids in nappies as well, you're calculating how many nappies do you need, both in check-in and also in carry-on, and do you have enough? The carry-on thing can be really tough because you want to have enough nappies but not too many that you're lugging around. spare changes of clothes, enough things to entertain the kids, but without having to, be carrying and lugging around a whole lot of stuff as well. So I would say that it's too much to take on, and there's definitely a mental load that needs to be shared more equally. And I would just be staying upfront, similar to what I did to you for this one, which is like, this is what I am packing, this is what I'm not packing, you need to pack that. But I would say that even when I do the majority of the packing, I always say to you, you need to double check it and make sure nothing of yours is missing. So it's like, I'll do the packing for you to help you, but I'm not taking accountability for anything that's missing. You have to quality check it and still, own your own packing and make sure it's all there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, fair point. I will, dob myself in for this one. I mean, we have a particular dynamic in our relationship where you do the laundry, I do all the cooking. So we really have defined duties in that case, right? And that kind of transfers a bit over to packing of clothes because you're laundry master, right?
Yes.
So that does kind of flow over, and I must admit that extends into that dynamic where you just know where things are a bit better. So I do, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that as long as your domestic duties balance out in that fact, right?
Yes.
So I think that if that is the case with this listener, then I can understand that the dad doesn't know what he's doing, because there are times where I'm just not as familiar with the setup. So I have to ask you, and then you find that obviously a little bit more annoying, and then you'd rather do it yourself, blah, blah, blah. But I do other things. And it could be the same with this guy as well, right? So I'm just kind of putting that out there that if you have that division, that's okay. Maybe you need to talk about it. It sounds like you're not very happy with the division. But in terms of packing things and stuff like that, look, it's just like practice. It's like practice, right? You could easily turn around and I could pick something that you don't do, and you'd be very clueless at it as well, right? Like, you never barbecue. You wouldn't even know how to turn the barbecue on.
Yeah.
And that's okay. True. It's like, that's not in your domain, as you say sometimes. So I think just have a think about that in terms of this man could probably find something to throw back at you as well. And maybe it's more of an issue of things aren't even on a grander scale. Sometimes it smells a little bit like that. Now, in regards to always wanting mummy while the dad sits back and just tunes out, again, not ideal, but these things come in cycles. Like, you might find that when the kids are young, especially 2 under 2, they're very mummy, mummy, mummy. But, as they get older, the dad will be able to take some things. So you do have to swim with the current sometimes. I think just got to talk, it's all about communication. So if you're feeling that there are things that he should be doing or can be doing, or if it just grates you that he's overtly relaxing when he should be trying to do other things or whatever, then, have that discussion. But very much there are some realities of if the kids want something, one parent or the other, as we know from our kids growing up in the span, that ebbs and flows. And sometimes they can't get enough of daddy, and sometimes they can't get enough of mummy. And you can force them and you can pry them, but sometimes you just have to work with what you got, or follow the road, right? And not just drive off into the field.
Yeah, but I would say, like, even if the default is I want mummy, 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 especially when you're traveling and so forth, you still need to be present and on. And so you still can't, be sitting there with the headphones on, reading a book or listening to an audiobook. What if he's listening to a
parenting book or listening to this podcast? Maybe we can make an exception.
Clearly needs to listen to a different one. Because, it's easy, it won't change, and it will always keep defaulting to mummy if the father isn't being, or the other partner isn't being, proactive in that situation and stuff too. And there's still, I guess, other things that he can be doing to help and support, even if the kids are, wanting mum and stuff too. So, okay, do we need to get snacks out? Do the kids need something to entertain them, whether that's getting an iPad set up or getting a pen and paper, whatever you're doing? Like, there's still things that can constantly be done, and need to be thinking around how you're a step ahead of the kids before they get to the point where they're losing it and, crying for mum.
So true. And the last thing I'll say is that if you do have a talk as a couple and you decide that this is something that you need to split more equitably, right? Like, you make some ground rules and things like that, you do need to take the mindset that you're like training an intern while you transition, right? Because you may find that, and it happens on both sides, not just from one sex to the other, that you may not be happy with the way something's done, right? But you need to kind of understand how you're going to draw your rules, how you're going to get it done. A classic example, like let's use ourselves, right? You do the laundry, and every now and then I'll be thrown in because you can't finish the laundry for hanging it up or whatever. And there was that one time where I was hanging them up all wrong, right? So I wasn't like, hey, Rory.
Hello there.
That's all right.
Oh yeah, but I mean that was crazy because you were taking shorts that were like Rose's shorts, who's the 18-month-old, and putting them in Neve's drawer, who's 8 years old.
No. I'm thinking when I was hanging them up on the clothesline, and you're like,
Oh,
I
yes.
pegged them, and you're like, no, this is all wrong. It's gonna hang, it's gonna
They're gonna
dry
dry
or
weird.
wrinkled or whatever. And literally, like, it wasn't like I was doing something funky where scrunching them in a ball and pegging it from the crotch. It was
Close
like
to that, I feel like that.
it was not. It was like geometrically one on each. Anyway, all I'm saying is that you have to go through a bit of a period of helping if you want it done a certain way, right? And agreeing together, because there's more than one way to do a lot of things. But if you are the person who usually does that activity, you have a certain standard that maybe your partner doesn't understand or doesn't know how to hit.
Or just didn't learn growing up. I feel like you were like making a real point of that towards me.
Maybe. All right, let's move on. And I wish you luck with that. But although, if you're traveling already with young kids with 2 under 2, you're already doing well. So let's just put that out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's do a quick speed round. Now, the Melbourne-Sydney debate is something that always comes up, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, it's a bit of a love-to-hate scenario between Sydney-siders and Melbourneites. We have a situation where I've grown up in Sydney, born and raised, and you've grown up in Melbourne, and now you live in Sydney with me, which is convenient. So I want to ask this to you because you've been on both sides as someone who's not just visited, you've actually spent meaningful time living in the States now.
Yep.
Yeah?
Okay.
Okay, so this is just going to be a quick speed round. I'm going to mention something and you're going to give it to Sydney or Melbourne, all right?
All right.
You're allowed 2 on the fence, like they're the same. And then the rest has to be, you have to pick one, right?
Okay.
Okay, let's go. Melbourne or Sydney? Coffee.
Melbourne.
No clarifying?
No,
So-
not at all.
Okay.
Like literally not even close.
All right. Weather.
Sydney.
Fashion. How stylish people are.
Ooh, Sydney.
Sydney.
Yeah, I think that something I definitely have noticed a lot is like, if I think about work fashion and stuff, that the way that people and women in particular dress up in Sydney is more colourful and interesting than I've noticed in the Melbourne CBD.
All right. Sports.
Melbourne. And when I say that, I mean like in terms of being sport obsessed, Melbourne. I think the AFL has such a hold on Melbourneites.
Yeah. All right. Brunch and cafes.
Melbourne.
Traffic.
Ooh, Sydney.
Sydney's got better traffic.
No, worse traffic.
Worse traffic. All right. Just to clarify.
Worse traffic.
Nightlife.
Ooh, Melbourne. Although I don't feel like I'm probably qualified to give an opinion, given it's been a while since I've gone out at night in either city.
Architecture or beauty of the city?
Sydney. Unfortunately, definitely Sydney.
Okay. And finally, culture. Working culture.
Ooh. I'm going to go with they're similar, to be honest. You told me that I could have one that I didn't have to choose.
Oh, you can't finish on it. All right.
Similar.
Very good. Okay. You did well. I don't think you let either side down.
Yes.
So, we're in Melbourne right now, and I love Melbourne, right? So I think that most Sydney-siders have spent meaningful time in Melbourne Love the city as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except when it's cold and windy.
Like it's been for us.
Why do you make your city a grid when it's already windy? All right, we're going to talk a little bit about the kind of issues around flying,
Yes.
especially with kids. And I think that we can launch straight into a little bit of an extended best and worst on this. And we're going to keep this episode as domestic flights. So shortish kind of flight times. Let's start with your best and we can have a bit of discussion. Take it anywhere you want to go.
Yeah, okay. So when I was thinking about my best, the thing that I was going to choose is the travel pram. A fold-up travel pram.
You stole mine.
Did I steal yours, or you have to think of something else then?
That's right, I have a backup.
So we have a yo-yo, which we love. There are, and I think when the yo-yo came out, it was probably one of the first of that kind of pioneering, I guess, this, being able to fold up as a carry-on travel pram and go into, an airport, into a airplane kind of baggage space. And it definitely is awesome. What do you do?
Your head's chopped off.
That's fine. It's fine. I can't really do much about that.
Yeah, go on.
So I think you'll need to edit this part out.
That's right.
Yeah. So what I would say is travel pram is awesome, especially because for a lot of people you have very expensive prams at home. Like we've got an Upper Baby Vista, for example. When you've spent like a couple of grand on a pram, you don't want to be checking that in because guaranteed the airport is going to damage it. But I would say that while we love our yo-yo, it's definitely on the expensive side and it's probably seen as like the premium kind of travel one. There are so many more out there that I think are really, really good and now do the same thing and probably fold in different ways. I would say if I was to just give some advice on the yo-yo is try it out in a store and try out other ones as well, because I don't think it is the easiest to fold up, if I'm going to be completely honest as well. Yes. I think that I still every time have this fear that I'm not going to quite be able to get it and I'm not quite as smooth as I would like. And I think there's some others on the market that are easier to fold up. That being said, I do still like the yo-yo and I'm glad we went with that one.
I have a funny relationship with the yo-yo. So I do agree that it has a very tricky mechanism, but once you get the hang of it, it's like a flip knife. It's quite satisfying when you get it right, quite addictive in that way. But there's lots of pinch points and so on. When we first borrowed one from my sister, I thought, this pram is a piece of crap. It's so unsteady. It has such a small, narrow wheelbase and it tips over so easily.
Yes.
But when you realize how incredibly compact it folds, and the fact that it folds flat with the wheels and can go into under seat storage or overhead, there's really nothing like it. And I still think that a lot of the so-called travel prams either are two-piece issues where you have to take wheels off or something like that to transport them, or they just don't get as flat.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like this nice little briefcase, this little thing that you can throw over the shoulder. And I really think there's nothing like it. I know a lot of people like what they have and maybe we're the same, but we had the chance to buy something different and we just...
we did a lot of research and we obviously went with that because, I think that a lot of people find that, I know we're talking about travel and so forth, but you will find as the kids get older and older, you'll start to use your big expensive pram less and the travel one more. So you will get, I think, a lot more use out of it as the kids get older, you'll find as well, as a bit of a ad hoc, throw it in the car kind of pram for your 3-year-olds and stuff too. Yeah.
But anyway, if you're in the market for it, I highly recommend it. Just make sure that you check it. Some people think of it as the Apple of the category, right? Where maybe it's a bit overpriced or whatever it is, but just make sure you try it alongside the other brands because it's tried and true.
Agree.
And it gets really compact, like properly compact.
The other thing I would say about the travel pram is that, yes, in our case, often our daughter does not want to go into the pram, but that's okay because what you end up doing is carrying the child and then using the pram as a great trolley for all of your other crap. And that actually is quite useful as well.
You can be that homeless bag lady.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Are you allowed to call them homeless anymore? I don't think so. It's like between houses or something. Okay, let's go with should I go? Actually, I'll go my best.
Yeah, you do your best.
So we'll stay positive. Look, I had the yo-yo as well. So you've stolen mine. Now I've got two things. One of them is a very obvious recommendation, but it won't be my full one just because it's so expensive and it's probably questionable in terms of long term. That is an iPad. So absolutely, you are going to have to make peace with the fact that you need some shows or some visual entertainment for your toddlers to pacify them on flights. And the best way to do that really quickly and set that up is an iPad that has downloaded shows on there that your child already likes and putting that on. So I think that that's in a lot of ways is a game changer. Having a portable device like that can captivate the child. And very much it does make a difference between a phone and an iPad. And we found that out this trip, where your phone didn't cut it and we had to get the iPad out, and that worked for Rose, right?
Yes. And I got massively shamed one time when I was traveling with Rose on my own by a flight attendant who was sort of like, what did we used to do before all these screens? I guess that we used to use, pencils and paper and things like that. And I thought, well, you probably didn't do that much travel with a 1-year-old potentially 30 years ago as well. Pencils, paper, all that kind of stuff absolutely would work when it comes to older kids. Like, for example, Neve and Jake, who are, 8 and 4, they absolutely could do a 1 or 2 hour plane ride without any screens. You could give them other things to entertain them, play games with them, etc., and they would be completely fine. But when you have a 1-2-year-old, I cannot think of any other way to keep them, especially if they're sitting on your lap, other than feeding them snacks. So when they're eating, they'll be okay. Other than that, I can't think of a way to keep them entertained really without some kind of screen, to be honest. So
true. So anyway, iPad is a lifesaver. But let me go to one that's a little bit more affordable and a little bit, more applicable here. And for me, it's going to have to be Milton wipes. So I'm a bit of a germaphobe. I think there are key moments of transmission when kids eat and things like that. And being able, for young kids, we're talking about 2 under 2 here, having Milton wipes, which is a special type of antibacterial brand called Milton that has been around for forever. And the difference between Milton is that the formula that they use doesn't need to be wiped off as an antiseptic. You can essentially eat it or ingest whatever kind of chemicals that they use. It works on dummies, it works on stuff. So there's a version of it now that it looks like a wet wipe, except it has the formula on it. You can quickly wipe your child's hands so much better than using just antiseptic liquid. And then that they're okay to eat and touch their face afterwards. I love it. I think it's such a great invention. You can also use it on your phones every now and then because they're so dirty, dirtier than the toilet seat apparently. I don't know. Milton wipes, worth its weight in gold. I always get grumpy when we can't find our Milton wipes.
Yes.
So keep them in there.
Although I seem to have the mental load of always knowing where the Milton wipes are. Just saying.
I'm the one who ordered a bulk set of 10 of them. 10 packs. All right. So that's my best. Let's end with the worst.
Okay, so I went with straw drink bottles. So hear me out. Whenever you travel with kids, you always have drink bottles. In fact, all the time. Whenever you leave the house, even inside the house, kids are always drinking out of drink bottles, right? Because you can't trust them with a cup until they're like 10. They will spill it. But what you find in the airplane is that if you use one of those B-Box or a lot of these drink bottles that have straws that kind of open and close, because the pressure builds up, you open them and the water explodes.
Oh yeah, and everywhere. It explodes.
And we have had exploding water from water bottles happen many, many times all over us and so forth. So I would say worst is drink bottles. Have a think about a drink bottle that isn't going to behave like that when under pressure.
Or keep it open the whole time.
Oh, you have to keep it open the whole time, exactly. Yeah. And something obviously that your child is able to drink out of as well. That one has caught us a number of times.
Yeah, it's always surprising every time it happens.
Yes.
Especially I think it's the Cambrook ones, but basically they have a button release. And so as soon as you hit it, it's like a jack in the box and it sprays you in the face.
Yeah.
Very embarrassing. Okay, that's good. My worst is going to be a bit of throwing a bit of shade at the Qantas staff. While Qantas is in the gutter, I'll pile on. And I want to talk about a specific instance where you were flying alone with the two kids. Well, no, sorry. Well, one of the children were inside you at the time.
Heavily pregnant, I guess.
Heavily pregnant.
Yeah.
With a toddler, and trying to manage everything yourself. We were doing this crazy connection and with the other kids and so on, flying from Sydney to Melbourne. And the staff was so unhelpful, rude, and just the things that you would expect, the accommodations, the kind of service you would expect stewardesses or staff to provide a mother flying with infants by themselves were just not there. In fact, it was very much like, suck it up. And I think that was really shameful, and I would have been really upset if I was there to see that. How even that was the same flight you were talking about where you were shamed for using an iPad. That's a phone. That's the context. You were doing that because you had a toddler and you're heavily pregnant by yourself with all your luggage and everything like that. I think that sometimes the fleet is not the oldest thing about Qantas, it's the stewardess. So I think, that's really bad.
I mean, there was a number of things. We could probably talk about 10 different issues with this one, but I think probably one of the worst was when I was at the very, very back of the flight attempting to find a space for the yo-go pram while carrying a toddler, and obviously there was nothing available because I had to change a pilly nappy right before getting on the airplane, etc. And they wouldn't help me find a space. They said, no, you need to find it yourself, while I was carrying a toddler 7 months pregnant and carrying a nappy bag and a pram. And they offered to hold my baby for me, which is very kind of them, given I'm sure I want a stranger to hold my baby. And also, I don't think my baby wants to be held by a stranger and is probably going to scream. As predicted, that's exactly what happens until mummy comes back, while mummy is, stressed out trying to find a space for this pram, rather than just taking my pram and finding a space
Which
for
you
it.
see them do all the time.
Many times, yes. Help people find a spot. And that was just one of 10 different issues that I had on that flight. But yeah, that was pretty terrible. Pretty sure the experience of that flight is what gave me a hernia when I was 7 months pregnant as well.
It's not a figurative hernia either. It kind of just changed my worldview, or my point of view that mothers do get special treatment, right? Because I always just held that view that you always see people making concessions for mothers wrangling kids, and I thought this was a really shocking case of that not occurring when it needed to occur. So that's mine. Look, there are so many things that we can talk about with flying with kids and the different things. We will do an episode that covers our 24-hour trip to Europe with Rose and all the things that we did to help entertain her. We'll do like a long haul edition of this. But I think let's keep this one to just domestic and keep it there.
And I would say at that time she was 8, turning 9 months. Screens don't work for that age. So that was not an option. It's really only over the age of 1 that they will kind of be able to be preoccupied with that. So we did a lot of singing and entertaining on that 24 hours, that's for sure, and a lot of rocking to sleep.
Yeah, and funnily enough, there are not too many places where you can rock a baby on a plane without being interrupted. But let's keep that for next time.
Yes, for sure.
All right, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Till next time. Bye.